What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Walkout Network. It's your man, Ant Walker, here with another edition of Unleashed, the weekly panel discussion show. And we had everybody on last week. So this week, we decided just to keep it to the core three. So let's go ahead and introduce the other two gentlemen as if they need an introduction on this channel. First, we've got the jack of all trades who's mastered them all, the senior editor of Sherdog.com, Mr. Ben Duffy. Ben, what's going on, my man?
Hey, I'm doing real well. It's good to be here with you guys.
Absolutely. All right. And of course, the panel is anchored every week by the associate editor of Sherdog.com, the man with the facts, the figures, the stats, and the numbers. He is Mr. Jay Petrie. Jay, what's going on, brother?
Hey, fellas. I'm looking forward to talk some weird fight stuff today because what are you going to do? It's always weird in the fight world. So here's the weird stat, speaking of weird. So the last fight card this weekend, Fight Night 175, started off with 4 straight submissions. That is extremely rare. It's the first event since Fight Night 90 in 2016 to happen this way, and that's the third one overall. The first time it happened was at UFC 7.5, so it doesn't happen very often that you get tap, but there you go. That the event started with such promise, and then, well, you know.
Then it happened.
And then it happened.
Didn't happen.
Then it kept happening.
All right, so definitely a good stat right there, but I want to switch course just a little bit. I know this is a mixed martial arts show, but we do touch on some other things at times if we feel it's important enough, and I do feel this is important. I got a text from Jay Friday night. I'm out for the first time since COVID, out with the family, going to Outback. Food hits the table. I'm like so excited to take a bite of my wings and cheese fries, and then I get the text. Chadwick Boseman, the actor who played Black Panther, Thurgood Marshall, Jackie Robinson, among plenty of other roles, passed away of a secret battle with colon cancer that lasted for 4 years. So, I think everyone knows who follows me on social media or watches this show or anything, just pays attention to the hats and the shirts that I wear. You know how I get down on a lot of this stuff. So I thought, and we all thought it was appropriate to just take a quick moment to memorialize someone who made a cultural impact. And I think that's something that we don't see very often, the sort of impact from his work. We don't see that happen all the time. That's a very rare moment. I know as a black guy who was into comic books growing up, not seeing heroes that look like you very often, it's different. It's very different, and to see Black Panther brought to life, among his other roles, he was a fantastic actor, but to see Black Panther in particular brought to life, how important that was for me, how important I hope that's going to be for my son, to see a theater full of people enjoying this collective experience, dressed in Black Panther shirts and dressed in kente cloth and all sorts of things that a lot of black folks just don't get as far as a comic book experience goes. That meant the world to me. I can't believe that man filmed all that with an illness for so long. He filmed like 6 action movies while he was dying, going through chemotherapy and surgeries and everything. That's just a warrior through and through. Fellas, the floor is yours. Anything you want to say to give a little bit of respect on Chadwick Boseman's name?
I feel, unqualified to really add anything to that. I mean, after that, just to call him a fantastic entertainer, an actor with such range, he meant a lot to me just as a kind of part of my entertainment diet of the last few years. But when I first heard the news, my first thought was, am I that out of touch that I didn't know he was dying? But no, he had frankly, bravely just kind of soldiered on. And I don't easily call someone brave just for putting one foot in front of the other and doing their job. But we're talking about an illness that typically just wipes people's entire quality of life out from the time they get it until they die. And he didn't let that happen. So, yeah, respect, rest in power.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's weird to me because, you know, there's always that phenomenon about a celebrity, somebody that you don't know, passing, and it can impact people. It can really break people up, or just it's I didn't know them. I respect them. I appreciate them, and whatever. But this felt different to me. This hurt a surprising amount because of not just the simple things like that he was an incredible talent, and he was still so young and just now getting into it. He'd only been in the acting world for 10 years or so. Jackie Robinson was in 2012 or so. But to see the movement that he was able to be a part of, the people he inspired, the people he brought out, it felt to me like something great was lost. And even if I don't personally have the same exact experiences, I still am able to empathize and feel that kind of feeling that, wow, this was a terrific, a great human. We probably everybody has seen the clips by now, like the Kimmel show, where for a couple minutes he had people come up and speak to a poster and say to Boseman what Black Panther meant to them and how it meant to them as a representative of the culture and everything like that. And then they'd pop out behind the curtain and they'd go, "Oh my God," and lose their minds for several minutes. And that reaction, that really drilled it home for me. Like, wow, they're actors and they're entertainers, and then there are other people that transcend that. And he did. I mean, besides the fact that the first leading male Black superhero is one of, I think it's right outside the top 10 biggest movies that have ever happened. He just, Chadwick had just a persona, a personality. He just had so much to him, and it's a shame that we lost him so early. And going through what he went through for that long, I mean, he became famous while he was slowly, dealing with his illness. It's incredible to think, and what he went through. And even towards the end, when people were starting to rip on him because he was getting skinny, that hurt too. To see people trashing on him because his public persona, he's, drawn out because, he's dealing with a terminal illness, and to see that kind of thing, it hit more than any standard normal actor would. And that meant a lot to me, I think.
Yeah, a couple more things I want to say before we switch course back to our normal program here. I think, like, when you bring up the images of him being really skinny and people making fun of it and all sorts of stuff, in hindsight, it's really disgusting that people would go there with insults and acting the fool right away. But we got to recognize this happens every day. This sort of behavior. Especially in our world. In mixed martial arts, a particularly toxic fan base tends to jump off these bridges way too often. So to all you numbskulls out there, you don't know what people are going through. You don't know. So before you start some shit and you start popping off at the mouth and saying all sorts of disrespectful things, just think. Something might be going on that is beyond your level of troll. So try to be a halfway decent human being if that's not too difficult. I don't think that's so much to ask. I'll say this too. Without going into the deeper discussion, which probably would be its own show, completely unrelated to MMA. Like, this, for me personally, is hurt on multiple levels. So it wasn't just that, okay, I'm a huge comic book fan, this is Black Panther. It wasn't just that. It wasn't just the fact that I also attended Howard University, his alma mater. It wasn't that we have that connection or the connection with comic books, or 2020 has just sucked ass on multiple levels. And this was just another gut punch that this year has given us. I mean, like, they just buried Kobe. Like, I've had beyond COVID and all, everything that's affected just our daily lives and even sports lives, as MMA has been drastically affected by this as well. Like, all sorts of personal tragedies that everybody's been dealing with. I know I've been dealing with. I had a cousin that passed a couple months ago. Lost both of my surviving great grandparents within several weeks of each other. about 2 months ago. So it's just, and then to see all these people that look like me on video getting shot and getting choked to death by cops and all this riots and there's all sorts of stuff, man. It just makes it so hard to just press on and just care about everyday life and like find the importance in just sitting there watching a fight for 6 hours on a Saturday. So there are a lot of people right now that are hurting, and maybe people are going overboard, mourning the loss of someone they don't know. But keep in mind the context of all this. This isn't just a guy we didn't know. This is a guy who symbolized something that has been very rare for people that look like me. Very rare, and something that the world finally started appreciating. So at a time like this, man, just be respectful. Don't be a dick. It's so easy to not be. All right. So now let's go back to our beloved pastime of people punching each other in the face for money. So we'll go from the serious to the circus that we like to cover on a regular basis. So now we've had some serious movement in the light heavyweight division. John Jones obviously vacated this title. So there's a vacancy at the top that will be decided at UFC 254, I believe that is, between Dominic Reyes and Jan Blachowicz. And now we've got someone else in the mix who's got something to say about where this belt belongs. And that's Aleksandar Rakic, who was able to do away with Anthony Smith with relative ease. Unanimous decision there. Gentlemen, what do we think is next for Rakic? Where should he go from this point?
Man, I don't see many opportunities. It's kind of a weird landscape right now at light heavyweight. Even with Jones gone, there is still a little bit of a logjam, and that's odd because right now we have the 1 and 3 Reyes and Blachowicz at UFC 253 on co-maining the Adesanya Costa card, and then we have Thiago Santos number 2 and Glover Teixeira number 4 fighting in the, I think it's the headline of I think it's like an October fight night or something like that. So we have 1 and 4 booked, which is so unusual that we have the 1 through 4 booked against one another. And then we have to look at the rest, and this is according to the UFC rankings, not Sherdogs or whatever, because UFC likes to run it that way. And then number 5 was Anthony Smith, which he'll change probably by the time the show airs. And then Hiri and Volkan and Rakic. I feel like there's only one real path, because right now the expectation is Reyes and Blachowicz will settle there, whatever it is, and go for the vacant title, the interim title, whatever title the UFC pretends it to be this weekend until John Jones comes back. And then Santos versus Teixeira is the next kind of the eliminator waiting in the wings, because if Glover beats Thiago Santos on the streak he's on, forget about it. It would be crazy to put anybody else in. So the only fight that really sticks out in the top 5 or top 6 or 7 is Yuri Prochazka. And that's a guy I've been high on. He made his triumphant debut by doing to Volkan Ozdemir what nobody had done to Volkan Ozdemir. And just he had some weird moments in the fight where, if you haven't seen the fight between Ozdemir and Prochazka, be sure to watch it because it was ridiculous. But I don't know. I feel like that's a pretty clear path. If the UFC actually is going for merit-based title shots based on the rankings of the opponents, that feels like the next one to me. But I don't know, Duffy, you got something else?
No, my thought was Yuri Prochazka as well. Just there are too many people ahead of them for them to just sit there for 6 or 9 months. So yeah, make them fight each other. It's not the end of the world for the guy who loses, and for the guy who wins, it does kind of put him in the next in line position once that little logjam at the top sorts itself out.
But yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. I'm sorry, Jay. Didn't mean to cut you off there.
Oh, it's weird because the UFC, from what I've been looking at, is matching up the division the way it kind of should be. I mean, for whatever it's worth, Shogun and Craig are matching up again. They're 14 and 15, 11 and 12. Walker and Spann are fighting. I feel like Krylov and Serkinov, if they haven't fought 4 times, it feels like that fight has happened or could happen. And Magma and Ankalaev, one day potentially may fight Ion Cutelaba again, depending on COVID. But I feel like that's the UFC is finally matching up fighters in the division. I don't know, Ant. What are you thinking?
I'm agreeing with this. Like, I think we're seeing some of the advantages of not having just this world beater of champion around, because then you have no other choice. If there are no other stars in this division, if there are no other major names, I mean, yeah, Anthony Smith and Glover Teixeira, those are names that we know of. But as far as star power, stars buying power or marketability or whatnot, we don't really have a lot of that with the rest of the light heavyweight division. So we're forced to, I don't know, actually have these guys fight and see who's the best. It's just this amazing concept. And I'm here for it. Like, I would, under normal circumstances, and when I say normal, I probably should say abnormal. It's not normal to have a guy like John Jones reigning at the top of the division, who pretty much, if he, depending on his level of motivation, is likely to smoke everybody placed in front of him. Without that, with that absence, it's like, now we just put these guys together. With him there, I'd say you don't want to put up Yuri against Rakic, because you don't want to kill a contender. And without him there, now it doesn't matter as much. Now put them together, and the division just plays itself out, because a lot of it is going to be based on who has Jones fought already. He's fought and beat Santos. He absolutely dominated Anthony Smith, and like, no reason to run that one back. He dominated Glover Teixeira, no reason to run that back. So now out of that top five, and the Reyes fight, I mean, close fight. I had it for Reyes, but judges had it the other way. So you look at in the top five, he's beaten 4 of those guys. So then you spend all the matchmaking trying to only have a rematch that people want to see, or just a fresh matchup. We don't have that problem anymore. I'm all for Yuri versus Rakic. Paul Felder on the broadcast gave a good point too, although I prefer the Joe Silva style of matchmaking. Winners and versus losers. Winners versus winners, losers versus losers. He pointed at the loser of I think Reyes and Blachowicz as Rakic's next guy, and then that propelling him to a title shot if he were to emerge victorious there. I'm not mad at that, but it's not necessary now. If Jones is truly gone from light heavyweight, it's not necessary. Let the contenders fight each other. Let's see the cream truly rise to the top. All right, so now let's move along here. We're going to hit a swing or miss on this one. That kind of a bad pun. So after 7 years in the UFC, Neil Magny is making a run at the title. Gentlemen, are we swinging? Are we missing?
I'll go. I'm going to give this one a miss, and I feel bad saying this because you will not find a bigger Neil Magny fan than me. I have been, I mean, since the first time I saw him. He was on a exceptionally poor season of Tough, full of annoying people, you know, with like Julian Lane was the goofball of the season. And he's the guy that just kind of like was chill, sat around the house, looked around and said, I could get used to fighting every 2 weeks. And that sort of became his mantra for his first couple of years in the UFC. I mean, there's a reason that he's like sneaking up on the all-time mark for wins in the UFC so quickly. You know, he's been kind of like quiet Donald Cerrone, and his win percentage is about as good. But, I mean, we're talking about 3 straight wins over guys with, you know, decent name value, but not world beaters. I mean, even the 2020 version of Robbie Lawler, clearly not a world beater. And we're talking about the division where it is probably the hardest to get into the actual title contention picture, even including lightweight, that might be a better division overall. But as for the question of what do you need to do to get into the top 10 of this division, what do you need to do to get next in line for a title shot? This is a division even now where you can win 5 fights in a row, 6 in a row, 8 in a row, and just be hugging the bottom of the top 10. He's won 3 straight. And Magny, even as awesome as he is, and even as he's developed over the years, has been a guy who's prone to dropping a fight he maybe shouldn't at any given time in the most unforgiving weight class to do that. So, yeah, I don't see it, unfortunately. He has plenty of time. He's not that old. He's not taken that much damage, so he has time. He probably has another 4 or 5 years left of his prime, but I think he'll always be the guy that just loses a fight at the absolute wrong time. It would take the stars really, really aligning for him to get into the title picture. And again, I feel bad saying that because he's awesome.
Jay, what are your thoughts?
I mean, this is a guy that developed a nickname at the age of 33 after years and years of the UFC.
Really bad nickname.
It's bad, but it's not like he woke up one morning and realized he was Haitian. Like, I knew he was Haitian from the time he was on Tough, you know, like he explained.
I mean, I don't know if he gave himself that nickname. I don't remember the story, but you know, aside from that, Dovey hit a lot of excellent points. But no, I'm not kidding. I don't really have a butt to bounce it off there. It's so unfair for fighters that have to compete in some of these divisions where there are 150 guys at welterweight. Or, you know, I'm exaggerating, but I think that there are actually 100 welterweights in the roster. I think that is about where they are. I mean, Magny is a top 15 guy, and I can't swing on him fighting for a title unless it's the Ovin St. Preux type of title shot. That, well, we need a body. We need someone to fight somebody. This other guy got hurt. You're insane. You'll step up on short notice, right? Magny, of course, would jump at any title shot that were ever offered to him. But there are so many horrible matchups ahead of him in the division that it makes it look difficult. And plus, he is only on a 3-fight win streak. Leon Edwards is a very interesting comparison in that Leon Edwards has won a tremendous amount of fights, no respect, and his wins, some of them can be close, but otherwise they are not really thrilling. Like, I can't think of more than a few wins that I can picture right now that Leon Edwards has had. And Neil Magny is that kind of guy. He'll get a decision, and he may dominate you from bell to bell, but okay, you know, like the Robbie Lawler fight. Are people banging down the walls to see him fight somebody? Like a Jeff Neal, which was the fight that was supposed to happen, or a Mike Chiesa, which Chiesa was very excited on the broadcast. That's a reasonable fight. And then should Magny win that fight and beat a top 10 guy, he'll be like 4 wins away from a title shot. So good luck, Neil Magny. His fight IQ has improved. Like I will say that he looked fine in the Ponzinibbio fight, and Ponzinibbio just has fast hands that can finish you in the 4th round because what? He's in the worst division possible, and he's got the body type where he can't move. He's never going to move to 155, and 185. I think he'd be tall and lanky, but I think he'd be small. Like, I don't think he'd fill out like an Adesanya type. He can be. I'll swing on this. He could be a top 5 guy before he hangs it up. He could be ranked among the top 5s. He could get a couple good matchups that make sense and get up there. But I just can't see him winning a title, let alone fighting for one, unless it's Usman was going to fight Wonderboy, whatever, and Wonderboy hurt his ankle. Who's up for it? That kind of thing.
Yeah, I think you both make excellent points there, and I it's hard for me to disagree with that. Neil Magny has looked sensational, since his return from it was a injury and like was it Austerine or something that had him suspended for a little bit.
Some substance,
one of those that they kind of swept that under the rug a little bit there. But I think the problem with Neil Magny is not only just the division that he's in, which is a powder keg of ridiculous talent that doesn't match well with him on paper, but it's also the fact that his improvements aren't necessarily aesthetically pleasing. You know, he looks fantastic in the clinch. He looks like a killer in the clinch. He looks great at negating people's offense and slowing you down. Like, I think the performance against Jing Liang was ridiculous from a technical standpoint. Oh, yeah. However, that's not the sort of thing that gets you to leapfrog the rankings, unfortunately. It really isn't. Now, I think if we were having this conversation, say, a few months ago, before like Fight Island was a thing, and there was just Apex Center, and they're just trying to find anybody available to do anything at the extreme that it was a few months back, I think we're having a different conversation then, because if Neil Magny couldn't stay healthy and stay ready, then he can just go in there, rinse and repeat, and shoot up the rankings the way Gilbert Burns did. Or he can shoot up in our consciousness like what's his name?
Chimaev?
Chimaev, yes.
Chimaev, yeah.
Yeah. So you can so if it was that scenario, I think we're having a different conversation. And then without Fight Island, you eliminate the international fighters.
Yes.
So looking at the rankings, it's like, yeah, there's not a whole lot of international fighters in the top 15 of the welterweight division, but it's just to get a few of them out of the picture and stay busy. But that's just not what the world that we're living in right now. It's going to take Gilbert Burns to get sick again, and Colby Covington to slip on a banana peel, and George Masvidal to demand too much money because he needs to get new embroidery on his robe. Like,
all those three things sound very reasonable, though.
Right. So so you're expecting several calamities to happen in order to boost him up here. Now, maybe if we have this conversation again in 6 months, and since then Magny he's defeated Luque, he's avenged the RDA loss, and perhaps he beat Wonder Boy, then we're having a different conversation. But I don't see those scenarios happening that much either. I don't think all those perfect storms are going to happen to put him in that position, and it's unfortunate. In any other division, Neil Magny would be a shoo-in for some sort of at least a title eliminator. But we're also talking about the same division that Leon Edwards is in, and how many more does he have to win?
2, 3, 5. Hey, I want to call an audible real quick because I'm actually curious about this, because the stat Duffy mentioned, and I've been looking at this weekend, Magny's up to 16 wins at welterweight. 16 wins. The only guy with more is GSP, who has 19. Is winning alone and racking up, say he blasts by 20 wins, say he gets 24 wins, okay, or whatever, 24 wins before he hangs up at welterweight. Is that Hall of Fame worthy in itself without a championship fight, just a great top 10, 15 guy?
Sure. I mean, I think of Jim Miller as Hall of Fame material. I think of Donald Cerrone as Hall of Fame material. I think of Dan Marino as Hall of Fame material. It would be one thing if, I mean, this would never happen, but like some dude just stuck around and was like 20-23 in the UFC.
Caceres is halfway there.
He's above 500. He's now
sir.
13-10. That'd be one thing. Like if Alex Caceres retires at like 25-18 in the UFC, maybe not. But if you were very good for a very long time and just didn't quite get the brass ring, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are other factors at play. Jim Miller was a guy that has won a ton of fights, is still winning them from time to time, and just could never string together quite enough at a time. And even at his very best, he was about the third or fourth best welterweight in the UFC. Nothing wrong with that.
I'll push back on that a little bit, because I think that's fine and that's great. Like to have a run like that, but I wouldn't necessarily call it Hall of Fame worthy. Now, in Jim Miller, I mean for Neil Magny specifically, Jim Miller though was someone who held wins over Frankie Edgar and Gray Maynard when they were fighting for the title, and they were clearly the two best lightweights in the world. And then for Donald Cerrone, he's been in the title fight before. He didn't emerge victorious, but he's fought his way to the title. And also, both of those guys have had more fan friendly styles. The action and the quality of opposition, the quality of their wins speaks volumes compared to what Magny has done so far. You look at Magny's wins, and they've checked the statistical boxes, but they haven't moved the divisions very much at all. So I think despite the stats ringing up the way they are, I think he's still a little bit of ways from being considered Hall of Fame worthy, in my opinion.
I mean, the Lombard fight alone gets him in for me.
I mean, that
man pelting Hector Lombard in the head 350 times is just like that.
I mean, it's really interesting to think that he has wins over 3 former champions in the division. I mean, none of them were landmark wins. You go, boy, I really feel different. But Lawler, Hendricks, and Condit, those are respectable wins on paper for anybody. Then you got Lombard and Kelvin. John Manley is a top 10 guy. But no, really, there are some good names on the resume, but it's just, yeah, that's I think that's still a tough sell for that, because like I think of like a Jeremy Stevens, who has been around in the UFC forever, also has the most losses in UFC history. He's beaten some great names, but I don't know if he has that hump. I mean, we'll touch on this later, but yeah, I was curious about Magny, what he would take to get that spot. Anyway, back to our regularly scheduled question.
I kind of anticipated you throw that audible at some point, because watching the broadcast and seeing those stats on the screen, like, oh man, I didn't realize Magny had done this much. It caught me off guard, like where the way it didn't catch me off guard with Donald Cerrone. It doesn't catch me off guard with Jim Miller, and I think it shows the difference in the quality of those wins, the timing of them, and the fashion that they won too. Yeah. So, but yeah, I definitely respect the argument. Maybe everything we've said about Neil Magny is going to be different 6 months from now. Very possible. I'd like to see it. He looks so great since coming back into the octagon. So looking forward.
Neil Magny is the Art Monk of MMA.
Ooh, don't you throw an Art Monk reference and expect me? God damn it, Neil Magny's Hall of Fame.
I did it. Done.
Oh, I'm a sucker for some Art Monk. Don't
First ballot
again, Ben. Damn you. All right. So I'm going to present you guys with a couple options here. You may not like them, but you choose one or you perish. So here we go. Which man should hang up their gloves after a disappointing loss? Should it be Anthony Smith or Robbie Lawler? Gentlemen, floor is yours.
Ooh, man, that's really tough because of the nature of the losses. Because Anthony Smith has lost, I think, is 2 in a row now, and both of those losses were demoralizing. He looked defeated in the cage. He looked like, I believe I saw on the Twitter sphere, there were legit people saying maybe the corner should call this one up for him. And that's nothing compared to the beating he took from Glover Teixeira a couple months before, when he literally had teeth knocked out. And yet Smith is 33. He's still, he's got a ton of fight mileage on him, and he came into his career early and simultaneously late into it because of how much he did, but he was also Strikeforce beforehand. But Lawler's 38, and I said this, and it was picked up on the Shillen and Duffy show also, about a gun-shy Robbie Lawler is a difficult thing to see.
I credited you.
And I felt, I think because of that performance, I feel like there's nothing left for Robbie Lawler to prove. And I don't know if there's anything left that Robbie Lawler can do to prove himself. I don't want to see him fight Mike Perry. I don't want to see 2021 Robbie Lawler fight Mike Perry, because what is the best case scenario? Well, Robbie wins in most people's eyes, but in many, the worst case scenario is that Mike Perry holds a win over Robbie Lawler, and
Mike
just
that continues existing.
That's a Matt Mitrione knocks out Fedor type of result that makes the diehard fans go, oh. Whereas Anthony Smith has lost to Glover, who is on a surprising tear, and Aleksandar Rakic, who was rocketing his way up to the title, and punted Jimmy Manuwa's face into the crowd. So maybe Smith has more to do in the division, but I don't see. I can see him making adjustments and changing his style up and doing something different, whatever he may do. But Robbie Lawler, man. What does a sprawling brawler do when they stop sprawling and can't brawl? It's just, he has the chin and he has the toughness, but I don't know. Lawler is a top 15 guy, so theoretically we'd throw him into matchups like Anthony Pettis or, I don't know, Vicente Luque, just Jeff Neal. It's just none of them sound like an interesting proposition. And do we really want to see him fight the Miguel Bezos of the world, the young up-and-coming Thundercats? I don't want to see fighters make a name off of some old legend. So maybe I'm going to say, Robbie Lawler, we love you, buddy. You've done everything we want you to do. We'll see you in BKFC in 2 years.
Excuse me, Ben. What are your thoughts here?
I echo most of what Jay said. Lawler, well, he really just stole my thunder when he said nothing left to prove. He was already an all-time fan favorite when he won the welterweight title in 2014. I said this in my post-fight article. The magic of Robbie Lawler has never been that he's untouchable or unbeatable. When he won the UFC welterweight title, he already had double-digit losses on his ledger. At his very best, he was the UFC's next big thing when Nick Diaz knocked him out with the jab from hell. Like, what we love about Lawler is that he has legitimate elite skills. I mean, he was unquestionably the best welterweight on the planet for a year after we thought he was washed at least twice over. But at the same time, just the incredible heart, the incredible blood and guts, the incredible competitive fire. I mean, and no top-level fighter is not competitive. They all hate to lose, but not all of them like scream at their opponent and spit blood on the canvas after the, third or fourth round of the fight of the year. But if that's all he has left, that's not a good look. Smith is only 32. I think we've definitely seen him hit a hard ceiling at light heavyweight, but he's an undersized light heavyweight. I mean, hell, when he was young, he was a welterweight. He has things he could do in the middleweight division. He could drop down. There are people he could beat. I don't know if he's title material, but again, he's 32. He's old in mileage, but until recently, he hadn't taken that many hellacious beatings. Smith's got things he can do. I don't think Lawler needs to.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with you guys on this one. But I will say this for Robbie Lawler. I don't think he's completely shot yet. I think he had trouble pulling the trigger. But in that last round, he tried he came out with some fury. Like
he had him hurt.
Yeah, we hadn't seen for a little bit. Yeah, and he came close to reawakening Robbie Lawler there, but that doesn't mean I want to see him try this again. So, and I think I might have said this when Tyron Woodley lost to Gilbert Burns. One of the things that troubles me is seeing both of those gentlemen not being able to start up when the fight started. It's one thing to be a slow starter, but it's another thing to almost have to be revved up into realizing you're in a fight when you're in the middle of a fight. And that, I think, is particularly unnerving to watch. So the way Woodley would like smacking his face and slamming his fist together to trying to jumpstart himself, the same way that corner was yelling and screaming at Lawler to go out there and get it, and then it turned on. Robbie Lawler in his prime state didn't need that pep talk. He didn't need that at all. He just needed to wake up that morning and prepare to steal souls or whatever it was he told Rory he was going to do to him. So with that being said, it worries me to see him like that. I don't want to see this continue down. And especially if you're going to put him where he should be fighting guys ranking wise, that's probably not the best look for him. Although this matchup was previously mentioned by one of you and you immediately shot it down, Pettis versus Lawler doesn't sound bad to me right now because I have some of the same questions about Pettis. So yeah, I'm down for that. But at this point, Robbie Lawler, if he's going to be fighting, he needs to be fighting names that sound sexy on paper. Maybe flirt with a middleweight bout against, I don't know, a middleweight worth having a bout with. I don't know. I remember hearing some talk about him versus Anderson Silva at one point that sounded interesting at the time. Now I don't want to see it. But you get the idea. Robbie Lawler is a name that should be fighting other names if he's going to fight. But Anthony Smith, though, has something else to consider. Anthony Smith has a career outside of being a competitor. He has done a fantastic job as a desk analyst. Probably can easily migrate his way into the commentary booth, and you don't have to get punched. But that being said, Smith probably has a lot more fight life left in him, although I think it's a little bit dangerous too for him, considering he is a consummate athletic overachiever that has kind of pushed his boundaries as far as they can go. And I think now we're starting to see, okay, this is exactly where Anthony Smith caps off. At least to his advantage, John Jones is gone from the light heavyweight division as far as we know right now. And maybe he can fight his way back up. I do think that's quite the uphill battle. But gun to my head, I'll say Robbie Lawler should be the one to call it quits after Saturday. All right, so after I said a whole lot about nothing for all that time in that very long monologue, it's time to transition into perhaps the greatest titled segment in all of media history, and that is I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons. This is where we get to share something in the combat sports world that surprised us or didn't, be it the fights, the pre-fight coverage, the post-fight coverage, or whatever else. So I'll start with you, Ben.
My I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment for the week. It's ironic because I'm pretty sure I chose him earlier this summer, last time he won a fight, but Alex Caceres, UFC featherweight, beat Austin Springer on Saturday night. Austin Springer was a last-minute opponent, I think his third opponent, maybe his fourth, I don't know. But he is now on a 3-fight win streak in the UFC featherweight division. And in the course of one of the franchises I write for SureDog, I've been revisiting season 12 of The Ultimate Fighter, on which he appeared. And it's interesting to see the development of Alex Caceres just as a fighter and just as an adult human being. I mean, on that show, he was a child. He was 21. I think he may have turned 22 in the house. Just kind of a goofball kid, really. He had the weird trademark of just having this like big dumb grin on his face before and during the fight. And if you had asked me to pick someone going into that season or coming out of that season that would be a fixture on the UFC roster 10 years later, he would not have been one of my first choices. Not even close. He was picked late on the show. That was a lightweight show, and while there were quite a few future featherweights there, he looked like one. But he is just stuck around. I mean, he lost 3 fights in a row at one point, came back, he's dropped 1, dropped 2, won 1, won 2. He's on a 3-fight win streak. And Springer aside, the other two are at least definitely UFC material. I don't think of Caceres as probably a future top 10 featherweight, let alone a future title contender. It's all the things, we said about Neil Magny, magnified, no pun intended. But even just to hear him on the mic afterwards, he's someone that all of a sudden has a well-developed mind for the sport. He talked through his fight and just clearly understood what he was doing and what was going on at every moment. And he is just the type of fighter that has literally grown up in front of us. He is still only, he's 32 years old. He's a guy that featherweights don't age as well as some of the heavier weight classes, but he's never been about, fast twitch athleticism and pure hand and foot speed anyway. At his best, he's a slick grappler like he was on Saturday. So I will probably continue to be surprised every time he keeps just picking off UFC featherweights with relative ease. Good job, Alex Caceres.
All right, good one right there from Ben. Jay, what is your I'm Not Surprised, Mr. Falcons moment this week?
Well, I will add to it real quick that I believe that it's Caceres' first 3-fight win streak he's ever had in the UFC, because he technically had one for about 3 days, and then he tested positive for the devil's lettuce.
Yep.
And you know what that does to families and lives and fight records. So
yep.
That this is a new world for him. So in my segment, let's leave the States and let's go over to our buddies in Poland, because the organization KSW put on an event, and it put on an event with fans, by the way. That's not the most surprising part of it. There was a limited amount of spectators and media were allowed in the building, but our European reporter Tudor Leonte did a very interesting study, investigative work piece on the co-main event fighter Quinton Domingos, who is a fighter born in Portugal, lives in France. He's a heavyweight, and he is all of the heavyweight. He is Mr. jacked up, he looks like a physical, I don't know, any of those words you can kind of picture it. So
very KSW heavyweight.
he is a very KSW heavyweight. So it turns out in his professional debut, he tested positive for everything. Like, it's easier for me to say that than to list what he actually tested positive for, like methanolone and drostanolone and trinobolone and other hormones and testosterone from exogenous substances and more. And then he had his B sample come back and said, hey, test that. I believe that something happened and it was a big problem. And he tested positive for those things and a couple more on the B sample. So France has recently legalized MMA in the country, and the commission is now coming into power and figuring things out and looking over results and saying, oh, this isn't right. That doesn't make sense. And France has also employed a state doping agency called just the French Anti-Doping Agency. We'll keep it that way. So they reviewed the test results, saw that he tested positive for a really evil GNC, and said, no, you're done. 4 years suspension. Your fight doesn't count. You're being fined. This is crazy. You shouldn't be fighting anywhere. You tested positive for everything. You melted the cup. So KSW was informed of these results and went, yeah, so happened in France. We're in Poland. What are you going to do? And so because of that, the fight continued despite that Quinton Domingos looked like he looked in his professional debut. That is to say, he looked physically imposing. And he fought a professional boxer, a former professional boxer, Izzy Aguno, who also looked like he came out of a men's fitness magazine. And the boxer kicked him in the leg once, and Domingos fell down and then rolled around on the ground and said he had a hurt hamstring. And a lot of fans on the World Wide Web called that event into question because, wait, the boxer got a TKO big leg kicks, but with one leg kick, and there's a lot of questions about this. So the fact that there are so many questions and so many stories, I don't have the answers, by the way, is a very curious thing because you wonder if Domingos had won and beaten the new fancy shiny boxer, would KSW have then come back and said, well, it turns out this guy was actually something. So questions among questions, and KSW going to KSW, and I'm going to love them until the wheels fall off.
Oh, promoter's going to promote. It's you got to love it. Wow. So I'm not surprised, Mr. Falcon's moment. I was torn, okay, because there was a lot to choose from. There was Tara LaRosa being a complete moron. Can't say I was surprised by that. There was also the poor man's Khabib Tony, Ian Kudalaba, and Magomed, the rematch. Like, that's just not happening, apparently.
That's not even the homeless man's Khabib Tony, but it sure looks cursed.
Yeah, that is cursed as all hell. But today decided we're gonna swing into the direction of wrestling. That's because a man that once held the heavyweight title that seems to just pop up on our headlines every so often, despite supposedly being retired from mixed martial arts competition, he's back again. I guess now the constant round robin of Brock Lesnar's contractual status has once again creeped its way into the headlines. Apparently now he is a free agent, and of course, looks like a bidding war is about to start again. Now we've had Scott Coker weigh in with his promotional muscle backed by Viacom, promising that if he gets Brock, they're going to have the Lesnar versus Fedor match that would have been really great like 7 years ago. And then also Stipe had something to say about this, and coincidentally, Daniel Cormier made his retirement official today. He might pull that pink slip, right? He might rescind that letter of resignation if Brock Lesnar were to sign with the UFC. So once again, this man has found a way to inject himself into MMA, despite the fact he probably won't fight. But hey, look on the bright side. At least it's not Floyd Mayweather doing it. So there's that. All right.
Am I a terrible person for saying I still get excited by the idea of Brock Lesnar fighting in MMA. Probably always will.
I want DC to fight him so he can get that magical payday, just because I like DC. But no,
I mean, how about he have like a pissing competition with the KSW guy, and we'll see whose piss was hotter.
Dude, there'd be like hands melting off and stuff.
It sounds like a job for Fight Island to me.
That's a Fight Island one right there.
That is a Fight Island headliner.
Throw in Abu Dhabi, okay? Throw him in Abu Dhabi. Like we need to steer far away from regulation on this one. You have a vacation coming up.
You can take the night off.
You start to have a seat. We got this. All right. So let's move on from the greatest titled segment in all of media history, and we'll go back to some regular discussion. So the Dana White Contender Series has been rolling full steam ahead. They've been signing everybody, pretty much. So 16 fighters out of the last 4 episodes have been signed. When this show was first came out, it was like 1, maybe 2 people would get the contract per week. Now that we're seeing a lot of people getting signed, are you gentlemen feeling like this product is starting to get watered down as far as at least what's at stake for the fighters?
Yes, but at the same time, I'm not mad at it, because in this new world, these are the fights that would be the first and second prelims on a UFC card. Like it's the exact same pool of fighters they're drawing from. Might as well have them fight under controlled conditions where they're not stepping up on 3 days notice to fight someone they haven't been prepared for and have no business fighting. Have them fight each other on the Contender Series, sign everybody who wins, and let chaos reign. But no, it might be watering itself down, but that's just the nature of the beast. We've had 15 fight UFC cards and 8 fight UFC cards this year. They are completely at the mercy of the virus and who's able to travel and who's able to stay virus free. So at least this is imposing some structure on it. They know months in advance who they're going to fight, and they know that they're probably going to get a UFC contract if they win. I'm all for it.
And UFC might as well snatch them all up and get them under that cheap ass contract while they can. Jay, what's your take on this?
It was, it's interesting because now by my count, we've had 19 fights because the first event had 4 on it. 19 fights and 16 signs. That's a crazy signing rate. And it does. I mean, and to echo what Duffy said, that the UFC needs the bodies to fill in these UFC Apex cards, period, the end. I think what Dana said on, I think it was the second episode, to somebody that didn't get signed is, okay, we may want someone to hang around Vegas a little while longer in case we need something. Impa Kasanganay won on the Contender Series, and then 2 weeks later, he was fighting Maki Pitolo. So this is a smart thing for the UFC to get fighters in Vegas, to get them on a relatively regular testing regimen. So they're being tested for COVID and for PEDs at the time. So there's kind of like a pre-screening window the UFC can have to get these fighters into the UFC, because it's almost a foregone conclusion now that you fight in the Contender Series, you finish the fight, you're in. We're going to really put that to the test, though, because I think it is in 2 weeks. There's a fight on that week of the Contender Series with a 36-year-old former amateur boxer fighting at women's featherweight, making a professional debut in MMA. So she's 36, amateur boxer with like a 24-16 record. So amateur boxer. And she's fighting Tanisha Tennant, a bantamweight from Invicta, who's 3-0. So we're going to really find out if the UFC is dying to get another featherweight in the roster, because, I'm torn because I want fighters to be joining the UFC, but at the same time, if all these fighters get signed, where do the rest of them go? Because there are going to be fighters that are going to be cut. And it feels strange that it's possible to have a top guy or girl get cut on the heels of 2 losses because, we got to save roster space for these Contender Series fighters, which is well and good. We've had some great fighters in there. And the UFC puts up that graphic and says, look at the records of these Contender Series guys. Look at Edmund Shabazian. He's awesome. Jeff Neal's great. And some of these fighters are spectacular. But that's a small percentage of the entire Contender Series pool, not counting like Charles Birds and other names. I can Deontay Mays, Dontel Mays. and a bunch of other fighters. So yeah, it is what it is. Get the fighters to Vegas and get your ass to Mars, and we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, it's hard. And I know I said it before, but it's very difficult for me to distance my thoughts of the business of the UFC from how they're dealing with the Contender Series right now. I'm gonna hearken the name that tends to make Dana White shiver, and that's Trent Reinsmith, who actually I thought Dana would have blocked him on Twitter, but he ended up responding to this, which I was completely floored by. So Trent theorized that these signings on Contender Series are to get these guys in lower level deals while they can, while they're most likely going to start cutting established roster. So all those spots get filled with cheaper people.
Ooh.
And it just makes all the sense in the world to me. It just seems exactly like something that we would expect the UFC to do, especially as reports of Endeavor or WME, whatever they call themselves now, are being in financial trouble, and the UFC just kind of being the constant source of cash for it. If they're cutting back costs, I mean they're simply not paying out show money on all these COVID-19 these fights getting scrapped last second to the guys who haven't tested positive. They're not even giving them their full show money. I mean, this is all financial. And then also too, it seems like you're not even all the way interested in signing the absolute best talent when you left Anthony Romero on the table. That just didn't make any sense. The guy who was clearly, at least in my eyes, was the most talented person on there, the most polished fighter, who's been UFC ready for at least a year. It just doesn't make much sense. So if I'm seeing them sign truly the best talent, then okay, maybe I don't think as sinister with his thoughts. But hey, I'm cynical. I'm an asshole. We know this. This is very well established on the Walkout Network, and I'm not changing. So, suck it. All right. So let's move along to something I know we're going to have a good time talking about. Wanderlei Silva has announced that Fight Club After Dark will take place on Mike Tyson's ranch late November. Slated for this card. All right, I'll say that loosely. Wanderlei is supposed to be finally fighting Vitor Belfort again. Tito Ortiz versus Rashard Evans in the trilogy that no one asked for, and Fabricio Verdum versus Fedor Emelianenko in a rematch that at least mildly interested in. What are the chances of this happening? And I think I know everyone's answer, but I just want to see how hilarious it's going to be when you guys say it.
Well, the chances definitely dropped when Wanderlei deleted the post. Probably after getting some dunning messages from the promotions that Fabricio Verdum, Fedor Emelianenko are under contract with, but even before it said Victor Belfort and Rashard Evans. So even at the time, I felt like I was walking past that imposter cologne booth at the mall. Are you going to put some dude with a similar name that's not the same guy out there if I buy this pay-per-view?
They will.
Just kind of
Calvin Klein.
Inspired by Rashard Evans. I mean, this was bullshit from the jump, but it was funny bullshit, which is all that Wanderlei Silva's really given us in the last 5 years of his life. So, yeah.
So was he talking about this on Mike Tyson's podcast or something, or
he just kind of posted it on Instagram, just out of nowhere?
All right, so that's just
to me it was strange because the poster quality took a little while to put. You could tell it took a little while to make that thing. It wasn't a little slapdash, throw it in GIMP image manipulation, go boom, boom, boom. No, this was a real poster that had some egregious spelling errors, which is why I think it was deserving of being asked, because it had the details, it had the location and the date. It was a great fake poster, but why would Wanderlei Silva write it if, you know, I mean, he announced his fight. He announced that he was fighting Vitor Belfort again, and it said MMA. Now, if it hadn't said MMA clearly on what they'll be fighting, I could see it, because then it could be grappling, or it could be an exhibition, or it could be a boxing match, or hey, maybe Verdum versus Emelianenko, let's do a sambo match. That'd be weird, right? You know, that kind of thing. But MMA, just, you know, there's too many companies, too many contracts, too many cooks, and no, it's the kind of thing that you could picture on Mike Tyson's ranch, and there's that 1% of hope that maybe let's get weird, but come on.
Yeah, that is ridiculous. Like, there's just so many things wrong with this. Like, I mean, I know you guys talked about it before, but Vitor Belfort signed the one championship.
Yep.
Wanderlei Silva probably can't even get licensed at this point. Tito Ortiz, I don't know, we saw him last fight, for Golden Boy?
Yep.
Oh, Combate, that's right.
That's right. I was there.
Yeah.
I watched it in person. Yeah.
So Rashard Evans, actually, since retiring, has become vegan or something. He said if he does come back to fight, he's going to fight at a lower weight class. When I saw him, he was slim. He was like really, really lean. He was talking. I thought he was even talking about like 170 if he were to come back. Wow. And he's that small now, at least from what I observed. For Rico Verdum, and his UFC contract is up, right? But I don't know, they're probably in their matching period still. And Fedor, like Bellator guy, like in Ryzen, fuck out of here. Like this like, and the reason why I asked if this was something said like at the Tyson Ranch, I've been there. You get high the moment you walk in the door. There are a lot of weed being smoked on the Tyson Ranch, and a lot of wild thoughts pop up in your head. I was at the Tyson Ranch for like a media day, high as a kite, because everybody but me and Casey and Esther and Oscar. Oscar wasn't there. We were texting the whole time. But like Matt Hunter, we weren't smoking. Like we were like the only ones that weren't smoking. And so like Ramundi, like that's it. So everybody, like I interviewed Mike Tyson with him blowing weed smoke in my face the whole time. Everybody was high out their damn mind. Rumble was high as fuck. so I'm like, if this was the scenario, then yes, this probably would have been great to talk about. And then, probably like, yeah, man, I want to fight Vitor, and then we'll put Tito and Rashad on the card. Yeah, we'll get Vervicio and we'll get Fedor. It's gonna be great. We'll do the fight here. That's the only context that makes sense. And Tyson probably just smoked. Like, yeah, fuck it, that's cool. Let's do it. That's it. This is not real life.
Like I don't think you'll get this reference, but this is the Desert Sessions in MMA version.
Yep.
Of just a bunch of Desert Sessions is a rotating rock super group of a bunch of random people that go out to the desert, get wrecked, make music, go home, and then the next it rotates.
Hat tip to Jason Hartley, who thought that like we wouldn't know who Queens of the Stone Age were.
Oh boy.
All right.
Yeah, see, I thought Desert Storm, like not the war Desert Storm, I thought like the mixtape movement Desert Storm with DJ Envy. Yeah, but that's another story. That's a whole other story. Y'all ain't ready for that. All right, so now it's time for me to flex my authority on you mofos, and by that I mean the speed bag. So let me go ahead and pull up this clock. So you gentlemen will have 10 seconds to answer all of these questions, and you know how the format works, so I don't have to explain that to you anymore.
No.
But anyway, here we go. So I'm going to start with you on this one, Ben. Do you believe Ricardo Lamas is truly calling it a career? You have 10 seconds.
Straight up, I'm always going to pick, they're coming back. But as retirement talk goes, this was one of the more plausible ones.
All right, Jay.
It seemed like the kind of win that he wanted to go out and go, man, I did it. I broke my losing streak. I sent a message. I'm out. We'll see him in a year.
All right. So now Ray Borg also announced his retirement. Does it stick? Is he really calling it quits, Jay? 10 seconds.
Man, that stuck about as long as the Fight Club After Dark poster stuck. He deleted it. I didn't write an article. No, we'll see him again very soon.
Ben.
Yeah, he'll have a fight announced within 3 months. He's going nowhere.
All right.
He's 27.
Yeah. Wow. So the last question, would you stay at the UFC Hotel covering an event in Las Vegas, Ben?
Yeah, sure. I mean, why not? All that money they're saving on fighters has to go somewhere.
James.
Man, the idea of it, buying 10 acres around Vegas, which I'm sure is very affordable in a very difficult climate. I assume you would have to stay it there.
All right. So now let's go ahead and change that clock. I'm going to give myself 30 seconds to answer all of the questions in succession, and the clock will not start until I finish reading the first question. Do you believe Ricardo Lamas is truly calling it a career? I don't know, but let me go ahead and answer this next question. How about Ray Borg? Is he really calling it quits? My prediction is Ray Borg versus Ricardo Lamas sometime in the next 6 months. Let's get this work. Totally out of the weight class. Actually, Ray Borg he should be fighting at featherweight.
He's missed the bantamweight.
Would I stay at the UFC Hotel? Yes, although I'd be so afraid that they would kick me out into the COVID desert at some point simply because I'm so critical of the promotion. Hopefully the PR people were really nice to me. Maybe they let me stay. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just hoping. All right. So now, of course, we are in our marathon of weeks leading up to a much needed weekend off on December 12th. So hold your breath, gentlemen. This weekend, the fight card by the UFC will be headed by Alistair Overeem and Augusto Sakai. Do you think Sakai has what it takes to get this win over Overeem? Ben, looks like you're answering already.
I'm sorry. Like, from what I've seen, Sakai is smoke and mirrors. The 4-fight winning streak he's on, I mean 5 if you go all the way back to the Contender Series, the man's dodging bullets like it's the Matrix. Flattening Marcin Tybura inside of a minute, I mean, that's legit. You can't say anything about that. But he has a split decision over Blagoy Ivanov that he maybe should have lost, but I can see giving that to him. He had a splitter against Arlovsky that I thought Andrei Arlovsky won. And if 2019 Arlovsky could beat this man, Overeem is in better competitive shape than Arlovsky is. They're both in kind of a similar place competitively, but Overeem's better. If Sakai beats Overeem convincingly, then I need to change my tune. But I think Alistair Overeem is going to tune this man up. Yeah, and he'll settle into just being another dude on the roster.
Jay, what are your thoughts here?
I don't think a single media person, and myself included, scored that fight with Sakai versus Arlovsky in favor of the Brazilian. I just, that was not a fight that he won. Like, I hate the word robbery when it applies to results and decisions, but that fight was a robbery, straight up. I mean, I don't want to ever watch it again because it hurts, but that was not a good one. And yes, exactly what Duffy said. If you lose to an April 2019 Arlovsky, best of luck when you're going up the division. It's so strange to think that theoretically, if he beats Overeem, he can have a 5-fight win streak over a couple established top-ish 10-ish names and make a run at the title. But that would be the equivalent of Conor McGregor getting a title shot on the heels of beating Dennis Seaver. Like, oh, I don't like that very much. It's not. No. Overeem's gonna do bad things to him, and then Sakai's gonna go, oh, that's the top 5.
Yeah. I mean, outside of the top 5. I mean, like I said, he's been dodging bullets so far. I think this Saturday, Greg Hardy would punch that man's head in the guacamole. And that I'm not a believer in Greg Hardy as a fighter, really. If he runs into Derek Lewis,
oh man,
yeah.
I'm getting free chicken if he fights Derek Lewis. I know that. that Popeyes over on FM 1960 is going to be giving me some free chicken. Like,
yeah, it's hard for me to envision Sakai getting this win. Overeem doesn't lose against guys like Sakai. Like the guys that Overeem has lost to recently have been really strong wrestlers or really heavy hitters. Those are the only two guys that really give him trouble right now. Even Overeem, who we know whose chin isn't, at least shouldn't be the best. His chin really shouldn't be as good as it is now, considering the ungodly amount of times he's been knocked out over his career. And God knows how many times he's been knocked out in as far as Dutch kickboxing training goes. But like, I don't, Sakai, he hits hard as a heavyweight, but it's not Ngannou Rosenstruck power. It's not that earth-shattering power.
And he was 30 seconds away from beating Rosenstruck.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you think Sakai is going to turn into Curtis Blades and just hit blast doubles and stifle him against the fence and drag him to the floor and elbow him into oblivion? No.
That stifle against the fence is about the only thing I can say he could do, but not the rest of
it. And who's going to do that to Overeem?
Best of luck.
Overeem's clinch. Like, do you want to be there if you yourself are not a top level grappler or a top level Muay Thai practitioner? It's just not going to happen. I think Overeem is going to once again remind us that he is consistently one of the best fighters in the world, and just keep giving Father Time the middle finger. Like, that seems to be the most logical thing that's going to happen here on Saturday. But of course, there's a whole nother. I mean, this card is listed right now as 9 fights. I'm looking at Tapology right now, so let me know if you guys, if Sherdog says something different. But I thought that Brian Kelleher and Kevin Navidad fight was off, right? Was that, or was it postponed or something? Okay. Because it's not listed as one of the, it's listed here, but it's not numbered. So it's probably just a clerical error on Tapology's part. All right. So we got a 10-fight card. Now, what is standing out to you? Give me one fight that you're looking forward to, Ben.
I don't know. Like, it's hard for me to say that about one of these cards, but I'm excited for the main event just because, give me Overeem while we've still got him around. South of that, if I say I'm excited for any of these fights, they're going to disappear, just like Ryan Hall versus Ricardo Lamas.
Yeah, let's not jinx it. Jay, do you want to, go ahead and buck the MMA gods and see what's up?
I think I do, because Michelle Pajeto's too crazy to let COVID bring him down. Like, he's the kind of guy that would shout it out of his system. But really, the one fight that I see mayhem all over it is not OSP Manafield, although that might be, and we still don't actually know if that fight is officially on the card, which is crazy. But the one fight I'm really curious about is the debut of Alexander King Kong Romanov, because this guy is a Moldovan. I can't say he's a smashing machine because his best win is Virgil Zwicker, but he is a guy who has manhandled the guys he's fought. This is a guy who has forearm choked multiple guys. He is that strong that he can get guys out with his forearm on multiple occasions, and he's ridiculously one round strong. And he's fighting Marcos Rogerio de Lima, who is a kind of a, wasn't he a light heavyweight for a while? So he kind of moved up around the division.
It's hard to believe he ever did, because he is a unit now.
He is a full 250. He is Ilir Latifi, and oh boy, that guy fought at light heavyweight. No, Marcos Rogerio de Lima is a huge guy, and he hits kind of hard. I mean, he put out Ben Sassoli recently. But I really want to see if King Kong can live up to even like a tenth of the hype, because this guy is a first round killer. And if he gets out of the first round, will he fall apart? Will he do what Maria Agapova did and kind of go, oh, well, that's all I have? But I think that could be mayhem for the first round.
Yeah. So I actually got a little mixed up here. Brian Kelleher was originally supposed to fight Ricky Simone. Ricky Simone tested positive, or his cornerman tested positive for COVID-19. I was really looking forward to that fight. That would have been my pick if that fight was still going on. But another fight that I was kind of looking forward to is off the card with the replacement. That's Macy Chiasson versus Sajar Eubanks. Now Sajar Eubanks is fighting Carol Rosa. So it is what it is. Also, Nico Montoya was supposed to be on this card, tested positive for COVID. That poor lady can't catch a break. Damn, I feel sorry for her. She just can't seem to catch a break.
Her and Julie Avila are supposed to have been scheduled to fight like 3 times so far. It's almost as bad as Kudalaba Ankalaev. It's
Eubanks versus Chesson would have looked so funny.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting one right there. Yeah. But as far as fights that are actually still going on this card, sign me up for Thiago Moses versus Jalen Turner. Jalen Turner's must-see TV as far as the level of excitement I like to see in fights. Jalen Turner's right up there, so sign me up for that. Thiago's no slouch himself, so I think this is going to be a banger. I'm really looking forward to this one. So let's see. Any other notes? I think that's it. I think we have concluded this week's edition of Unleashed. So, of course, thank you, Jay. Thank you, Ben, for your stellar work as always. And thank you, mofos out there, for watching, for liking, subscribing, sharing, telling a friend, tell a friend, and tell that friend to tell 10 more friends. So, the social media handles are right down there. Just follow us. You can see our collective bodies of work, Sherdog.com, MMA on Point, Body Lock, and My MMA News. You know what you got to do. Stay beautiful, stay positive, and stay sexy. I'll see you when I see you. Wakanda forever.